Hey guys, welcome back. The seasonals are finally over. We have our champions, and today we've got none other. Well, we wanted to get the best aggro player, the best in the business that finishes the games the fastest. But unfortunately, Nick makes plays and South Simon were taken, so we had to settle with Mo. How are you doing, my guy?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Doing great. We've been talking even before the interview. This is going to be on banger because you are such an influential
Yeah.
personality, and I don't know, you're so awesome on social media. Every time I want to cheer my day up, I just go type in MreMOEtional on Twitter. I read one of your tweets, smiling.
Yeah, I love Twitter. Twitter's my favorite platform, probably.
Probably ours too, because you are there. Yeah, you are kind of an interviewee the first time here, so tell us a little bit more about yourself, like who you are in real life, what are you doing when you're not playing LOR.
Yeah, so I'm actually able to be a part-time mechanic, so I only have a real job part-time, and I'm a bowling alley mechanic, so it's like 90% doing nothing. I'm usually just on my phone or playing LOR or playing, like watching YouTube or something. And then 10% of the time, it's actually fixing the bowling alley machines, and it's trying to not die or lose like a hand or anything. So fixing those machines, because they're all really old, is kind of dangerous, but the payoff or like the backspin on that is that I don't have to do it very often, so it kind of makes up for it. And history and card games. I played a lot of Magic since like M15, so about 6 or so years ago. Um, about 5 or 6 years ago, I started playing Magic. Played in that competitively. Didn't never really won anything crazy. I top 8'd and top 16'd a bunch of events towards the end of me playing Magic. But then I switched to TFT because it looked a lot cooler. I played League for since season like 2, so TFT seemed really cool. I liked this auto battler genre whenever I saw it released in auto chess for the Dota mod. And so TFT, I was like, oh, I have to play this. And then Riot announced a card game right after that. And it was kind of just like all these things kind of fell in my favor. And I was just like, well, if Riot's going to make a card game, I might as well play the card game.
That sounds pretty cool, but I think I have a question. Maybe it's something that most people want to ask, and now it's time to unveil the mystery. Is your name actually Mo?
No, I've told a lot of people my name's not Mo. No, my name's Mark. A lot of people call me Mo, and it's just a name I go by. And it's really funny. It's just like a play on words for the username, like MreMOEtional, because for the longest time I'm very like monotoned and just chill and don't care. Or it's the exact opposite of like I'm really like hyped for no reason, or my emotions are just like really crazy for absolutely no reason. So it's really funny that it was just like a nice play on words, and yeah. So that's where the name came from. Well, that's not where it came from, but that's where the username came from, was off of the nickname Mo.
Alright, the mystery is solved. Now we can go to sleep in peace.
Yep,
You
it's
told
all done.
us how you actually got into LOR, but what keeps you still playing this game? What keeps you hooked? Because you are here with us for a long time now, if I remember correctly, since the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, I just think it's fun. I like the play pattern. I
What?
think LOR is actually the best
What?
card game, and it's the
What?
built the best, has the best mechanics out of any card game. I think that it has some things wrong with it compared to other games. Like for instance, the card pool is a lot smaller because the card's brand new. Because the card game is brand new. But the game itself is actually really fun, and I really like it. They've some like balancing issues and stuff like that on the dev side, but for the most part, the actual game itself is super fun. I love the interaction between like being able to play on both people's turns, or there is no it's one person's turn type deal in LOR. It's just round one and then round two. That to me is so cool to have that type of interaction. It's the exact opposite of something like Hearthstone, where you only play on your turn and you can't interact at all with what your opponent's doing. And it's a little bit more interaction than Magic, in a sense of in Magic you get to respond to every single little thing, but you can't play units and you can't play like slow speed spells on opponents' turns and stuff like that most of the time. So it's nice in between of not being as chaotic as Magic, but being a lot more interactive than Hearthstone.
I understand, but many people try to find the perfect card game recipe or a better card game recipe than the others before. There has been Hearthstone, people are playing Magic the Gathering Arena, so on and so forth. Gwent, do you think that LOR has what it needs in order to crack the code and actually become that best card game?
Yeah, I think LR is actually like I said, personally believe that LR is the best card game, which is how it's built. I think there are a couple issues, and that it's a little bit too late. Like Hearthstone is doing really well, but it's because Hearthstone also came out like 6+ years ago or so, 5+ years ago. I think it came out in like 2013, 2014. So it has this huge like 6+ year jump on LOR. Same with Magic the Gathering, like that card came out 26, 27 years ago, so it has a really huge jump on Legends of Runeterra. So that's the biggest downfall or the biggest like downside to LOR is that it just kind of came out really, really late compared to other card games. So I don't know how big a card game audience is compared to all the Zoomers with short attention spans wanting to play like Fortnite and colorful shooter runner games and stuff like that. But I think if LOR tried and did like maybe more marketing or did something, I'm not really too sure. I think it's already the best game. It just needs the player base behind it.
Yeah, for sure. But as you mentioned, it's a young game. We have plenty of time to fix the issues and grow into that perfect card game that everyone wants. Speaking of cards, do you have any favorite card in this game? Any of them? You are an aggro player, so I suppose one of them is an aggro card.
Yeah, it's probably just Draven. Draven's so good. It's such a good card. I like Draven. It's just a nice body. It's like a 3-mana 3/3 quick attack. So 3-mana 3/3 quick attack is already really good. On top of that, he just gives you free value with an axe, and that also can synergize with a couple different decks. So in the mid-range decks, it synergizes because you can discard it with things like Sump Dredgers and Rummage and stuff like that, or your Time Winders. In the aggro variant, you can use it to discard things like Vision. Like Draven is actually just like one of the most perfect cards in LOR because it can fit into every single archetype. You play it in control, you play it in mid-range, you play it in aggro. It gives you value on play. It's a nice beat stick. It's a nice blocker. It does so much. It's almost like the perfect champion.
Do you think, speaking of Draven, do you think that LR is in that pursuit of fire of finding the best free drop champion? Because we have this meme around, you know, that every champion they released, it's free mana,
Yeah.
it's a free, and it has quick attack. Do you think LR is trying to overtake Draven, finding a better solution for it?
Maybe. I'm not quite sure because I know Draven, I believe Draven is actually like the perfect champion. So I think Riot probably knows that, or maybe thinks that way, or thinks maybe if they don't think Draven's the perfect champion, they think, oh, he's a really good champion because of these reasons. So they're trying to copy it. And that's really cool to see. So, I mean, I'll be sad if Draven isn't the best and there's something that becomes better, like Caitlyn, for instance, or Tristana or something like that. But for the most part, I like seeing it. I mean, it's nice. I think Draven's a really good card, so I would love it if they printed more really good cards that are basically Draven with 3-mana 3/3 quick attack and an ability.
Great, but from cards that you love to cards that you hate, which is the most hated card for you?
Probably Eye of the Dragon. Like,
Yes,
I hate
another
Eye
one.
of the Dragon, man. I don't know why. I don't know.
Should I ask
like,
why?
Yeah, it's just Eye of the Dragon, man. So Eye of the Dragon itself isn't actually that much of a problem because I've beaten Eye of the Dragon this last seasonals 2 different times. I just straight up like outplayed the Eye of the Dragon player because you can make them have to play proactively, and in most decks that play Eye of the Dragon, being proactive kind of sucks because in Legends of Runeterra in general, playing proactive is really, really, really bad. So if you force them to be proactive, you're already in a huge advantage. And then so the problem comes when you start to play 6 Eye of the Dragons in your deck because you can play the Aphelio spell. So it's not even just like, oh, if they don't have Eye of the Dragon on 3, then I win. It's, well, they have, you know, almost a quarter of their deck is Eye of the Dragon, so it makes it really, really hard to for them to not have Eye of the Dragon.
Yeah, we might see a hotfix, for example, in the next patch. We still do not have the patch notes. We are going to see, or maybe some cards are going to make playing Eye of the Dragon awkward. We are going to see. We don't even have the full cards, but we talked about cards that you like, cards you dislike. Which card do you actually identify yourself with?
You know, that's a great question, CastMin. Cards I identify myself with, you know, I probably crowd favorite. We kind of look the same if you think, like, I don't know if you guys know this, Riot actually used me as a model for the crowd favorite art, so yeah, probably crowd favorite.
Have you tried telling them that and asking them for copyrights?
I thought about it, I did, but they made the muscles too small on crowd favorite, so I don't want people thinking that I'm that small, so I figured it's not worth it.
Alright, makes total sense. Before we actually dive into the more competitive questions, one last question. Do you remember any funny or sad moments from from your playing career in Runeterra?
Funny or sad? I I mean, I remember like a sad moment from last seasonal when I queued into triple anti-aggro in top 32 against Jordan, and it made me sad. As far as funny goes, I mean, I think the funniest thing isn't even from my career; it's just from seeing LOR around me and seeing Glop go 3-2 and then still make top 32. That's pretty funny. I think all the memes from LOR have been really, really funny. Like the Shroom of Desert is Vast. That's a pretty funny one. All the memes, the LOR meme channel is really, really funny. My favorite meme was probably whenever I got LOR or Runeterra.ar taken down. There was a meme that was posted, and do you know the Squidward meme of someone like the Squidward being asleep in the first picture and then being like wide awake and alarmed in the second picture? It was someone stream sniping streamers for 6+ months, and it was Riot Games like sleeping, and it was Mo tweeting about being able to check opponents' match history, and it was Riot like wide awake and being like really upset. I thought that was hilarious. I just like the LOR memes.
Alright, but let's dive in deeper into the actual tournament questions. And first and foremost, how was your Swiss rounds experience? What did you play there? And yeah, how was your experience in the first 9 open rounds?
Yeah, so the Swiss was pretty easy. I just brought Triple Aggro, and the first, I think, like 3 rounds were extremely free. I played against just random people with not very good lineups, so that was pretty free. It started getting a little bit more complicated starting in rounds, I think, like 4 and 5. I had to play against 4LW, who's an amazing Brazilian player, one of my teammates. He also had an anti-aggro lineup. I beat him. Then I had to play against like Zorg Dungu, who had the exact same lineup as Hineki, who went 9-0. Who also had an anti-aggro lineup except for one deck. So my Swiss Reds were pretty easy because almost every single lineup I played had 2 really good anti-aggro decks, but then they just had one deck that kind of lost to aggro, and it was like, okay, I guess I just get a free win here. So that made it very, very easy. I think people just need to respect aggro a little bit more. And I probably would not be having very easy seasonals like I've had, at least in the Swiss portions. Because what happens is like 4LW's lineup was Ezreal, Draven, Anivia, and then some like Demacia deck. So Ezreal, Draven, and Anivia obviously do really, really well into aggro, but then the random Demacia deck kind of just folded. Same with Zorg Dungu. He brought Anivia, Ezreal, Draven, but then Azir Aurelia. So he had 2 decks that were really good into aggro, and then he had Azir Aurelia, which kind of just folded. So it wasn't too complicated. Even the round 9 that I lost, I was still pretty favored to win. My opponent just kind of drew extremely well, and then even after drawing extremely well, he had to draw an exact 1-of on that turn to not die. So it was still really close.
Why would you actually advocate, not in Top Cut maybe, but in the open rounds, why would you advocate for Triple Aggro? Because the opinions are not the same, right? Some people say, alright, if you're going to play Triple Aggro, you're not going to go far, probably steal some wins from someone. On the other hand, you can go Triple Aggro because the lineups are everywhere, so you can profit on that. So what's your take on it?
I mean, I just think Triple Aggro's I think a good triple aggro player is probably the scariest person in the tournament, because aggro already by nature beats bad players or bad decks / bad draws. So if you have a bad deck or if you have a bad draw or just an unfavored matchup, you're going to lose into the average aggro player. But good aggro players that can take the matchups that are unfavored or maybe 50-50s and still win those consistently are the ones that are just extremely scary to play against, because then you're already auto-winning all of your good matchups and you're auto-winning any matchup that your opponent stumbles the slightest in. But now you're also winning matchups that you're not supposed to win, or you're winning matchups that are supposed to be closer, and nothing can really stop that. So I recommend going triple aggro, but only if you feel extremely confident in triple aggro. If you don't feel extremely confident in it, I don't really recommend it. I would just recommend playing whatever you're the most comfortable with.
You're mentioning this good aggro player, and actually Swim made this comment about your playstyle because you are Mr. Aggro himself because you are playing so fast. You do not leave your opponent time to think, and he said like that's the way to play aggro. You do not leave your opponent time to think. You always play your turn like it's your last one, like you're on no clock permanently. Would you like to add anything to this?
I mean, I said it once, I'll say it again. I play fast because it's like a mind game, especially in seasonals with seasonal clock. You can abuse it. Your opponent only gets, I think it's 5 minutes, maybe 7 minutes, and then after that, all of their turns are 20 seconds long. So if I play extremely fast, then it can force my opponent sometimes in this mental game to play at my speed. It's like in boxing matches when you see somebody playing very aggressive in boxing matches and running around their opponent, they're making their opponent play at their speed and be really fast. And if they're not used to like dancing that fast, then it's going to be very awkward for them. And so that's something that I kind of do in LOR. And it actually worked both in like Swiss rounds and in Top Cut. There are very clear examples of when it worked. In Swiss rounds, I beat somebody because they straight up were just playing too fast and forgot to play one of their cards, or didn't play one of their cards, chose not to, whatever you want to call it, and I won because of it. And in Top Cut, in Top 8, the game I needed to win to make it to the World Championship qualifiers to qualify for World Championship, was against a Lee Sin player with Eye of the Dragon in play. And basically, I snap passed to him because I'm playing extremely fast. He snap passed it back to me. So as soon as he started doing that and he started playing extremely fast, I knew the game was over. I knew I kind of just had him where I wanted him, and there was no coming back from it.
I really want to highlight on that, but a little bit later. Alright, open rounds is over. You are taking the 8-1 and then you're qualifying for the top 32. Did you switch your decks or did you adjust your decks from the open rounds to top 32?
Yeah, so I didn't switch my decks at all. The only adjustment I made was I threw in one Ranger's Resolve in my Elusive deck because I expected there to be a decent amount of Ezreal Draven. Also, if there was a chance my opponent brought Withering Wail, then Ranger's Resolve would be really good because it stops my Elusive units from dying because a lot of them have 1 HP. A lot of the important ones have 1 HP. And it's Ranger's Resolve is really good against things like Time Winder, which is really big in the meta right now. Static Shock, it's the same thing as Time Winder, and then Withering Wail, right? So I wanted to have a counterplay against those because those cards will single-handedly blow that deck out of the water. If they can Static Shock your Green Glade duo and then another unit, you've basically just lost the game. Same with like Wail. If they wail 2 to 3 units, you just lost the game. So Ranger's Resolve having that to be the opposite of blowing your opponent out, be like, oh, they just spent 5 mana to board wipe you, and I spent 1 mana to counter that. That's a huge mana advantage and huge, like they're taking a lot of damage now, and it feels really, really good. So that's the only change I made to my decks going into top 32.
Oh, nice, and it paid off in the end. But let's do some pre-analysis, post-analysis. Pre-analysis in the open rounds, post after the open rounds. In the open rounds, were you scared of any opponent that you might face?
Like any player or a lineup?
Any player.
Or...
Any player.
Not really. No one I knew was actually on like... So everyone that I talked to or everyone that I knew was playing lineups were on 2 anti-aggro decks and then a 3rd deck that wasn't good into aggro. So I felt pretty good into just about everyone that I knew. I think the closest was probably BBG because he thinks he had a good triple anti-aggro deck, lineup, but I don't really think so. But because he was really confident, and because they were all 3 Demacia decks, that made it a little bit more scary. I'm glad I dodged him. At the same time, if you told me I had to play BBG on his lineup for the Swiss, I wouldn't have minded. So I don't think there's anyone else super afraid of.
Yeah, but moving forward to the top 42, where you actually knew who you might face, who you might not face, were you afraid of any opponent in particular there?
Yeah, the person I played in top 8, which was Eric. Because he brought hard anti-aggro. I mean, his lineup was the most anti-aggro possible, and it was really, I was not excited because I needed to win that match specifically to qualify for Worlds, and that matchup was the worst matchup I've had in my last 2 seasonals. So in my last like 25, 24 matches, that was by far the worst one, and it was in the most important game I needed. So that was one I was scared of. You could say, like, in the semifinals, I won, and then I was either playing against the lineup that I faced in the finals, which was TK Raka, Azir Aurelia, and Foundry, which is super easy for aggro to beat. Or the other possibility was, like, a Nivea, Ezreal Draven, and then, like, something else that was just really, really bad for aggro. So I guess technically I could have been afraid of that guy. But because he was losing really, really hard in a matchup that was just so bad for him, I never even considered playing him. I assumed that I was always just going to play the other guy.
The plot armor worked for you, and you finally
Yeah,
ended up not only in top 4, but you actually won it all. But
yeah, that's crazy.
you brought Triple Aggro. Did the meta that you wanted to play Triple Aggro, what was the meta that you wanted to play it in expected, or did you face any surprise doing your games in the open rounds in the top 42 as well?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely faced a surprise against Narek. I did not think people were gonna bring like Lee Sin. Definitely not bring the Zoe or sorry, the Vi Elise like go hard style PNZ Shadow Isle go hard Ledros deck with Karina. I was not expecting that at all. Um, but for the most part, I expected to do pretty well because everyone had this idea of bringing two anti-aggro decks and then just one deck that folded to aggro. So I wasn't really too worried. That's how I felt in the Swiss. That's how I felt going into top 32. I figured if I did lose in top 32, it was probably going to be to my round one opponent, bringing some cringy like anti-aggro lineup just specifically to beat me in round one, which I kind of just sat down and when I can't do anything about it if that's what they want to do, because the way that top 32 is formatted is really stupid, and you get to see who you're up against, and you get to change decks. So I didn't want to sit there and play a bunch of mind games and try and next level my opponent and be like, well, if he's going to counter me with this, then I'm going to counter him with that, and then if he knows about that, then he's going to go into this, then I'm going to have the double counter ready and all. Like, I don't want to play all those games. I just want to play. I just want to play Legends of Runeterra. So I just queued up aggro and said if he brings anti-aggro, then he brings anti-aggro. He didn't, so I kind of just won.
Is the summary of this: if they have it, they have it?
Basically, yeah. If they have the anti-aggro lineup, they have it. So it is what it is.
It is what it is. We're talking a lot about the lineup, so let's actually see what you brought to the tournament. And these decks, creatively named by me, first and foremost, the first aggro deck, this nuts aggro number 1, Lulu Zed. What was the meta call for this one, or why did we bring Lulu Zed to the seasonal?
I brought it because it's supposed to be extremely broken, and I assumed all of my opponents would ban it, and it was just ban bait. So that way I could play discard aggro, and then hopefully win with pirate aggro.
And did it
That's really
work?
why I brought it. It worked all but I think 2 rounds. And in the 2 rounds I had to play it, it was the very first round where I was losing really, really hard, but then I guess I accidentally top decked a Relentless Pursuit and won the game. And then in the next round, I was losing really, really, or I was winning, but then I threw, but then I top decked a Relentless Pursuit and kind of just accidentally won the game.
Accidentally
But
winning the game.
yeah, but outside of those 2 rounds, yeah, it worked pretty well. It just got banned every single round except for those two specifically.
Right, but your version is not really the usual one that we're seeing, and it's normal because it's a tournament, you want to take it a little bit. For example, I'm not sure we are seeing copies of ghosts on ladder. Why are we taking them in, or at least 2 copies of them in the deck?
Yeah, so the reason I like 2 ghosts is because sometimes we're in a really big mid range meta right now with a lot of like Shurima mid range, Demacia mid range. Draven Ezreal is a mid range deck that plays like 4/3 units and 3/2 units and stuff like that. So being able to ghost your Lulu so that way you can be able to attack with Lulu safely and buff something and not have your Lulu insta is nuts. Also, Ghost plus Rally is nuts. If you can Ghost Lulu, like I just said, but then immediately Rally, then you just win the game. That's a minimum of 14 damage on that attack. If you ever get a leveled up Zed, you can always just go Zed, and now you're swinging in for a minimum of 8 elusive damage, including if you don't rally. So Ghost just allows you for a bunch of really nutty combos with your champions.
And what did you decide to take out for this ghost and for the one of Rangers resolve that you mentioned you put in?
Yeah, so I took out the Inspiring Mentor for the one Rangers Resolve, so this list was on 2 Mentor. If I had to go back and change it, I would take out this Fey Guide. Fey Guide is an awful card. I hate this card. I think Fey Guide was awful. I didn't play it a single time throughout the entire tournament, and I drew it like twice, and both times I drew it, I was like, if this was literally any other card right now, I'd be pretty happy. So I hate Fey Guide. I would put a second Mentor back in and take out the Fey Guide. And then what I took out for Ghost, I don't know. I just copied Swim's deck list. So it's whatever Swim took out for Ghost, to be honest with you. I kind of just went, hey, Swim, I need a third deck. What's your elusive deck look like? He sent it to me about 20 to 30 minutes before the seasonal, and I used it.
So the story is actually true. He sent the deck 20 40 minutes before the seasonal.
Yeah, and the Pirate deck, too. I basically said I need a pirate deck and an elusive deck. What do you have? And he sent them to me about 25 minutes before the seasonal, and I locked them in.
I
Yeah,
don't.
during the Swiss rounds, it didn't have Rangers Resolve, and I was like, man, I really hope I never hit Ezreal Draven or Withering Coil. It was really like poorly built.
This story and all its changes is so juicy to listen to. Every time you say something about your story, how did you decide on a deck? How did you decide on bringing something? It's pure entertainment. But
Yeah.
what are usually, you said that you wanted to bring this deck as a band-aid, but what are you usually favored into and what do you hate to see with the deck?
I don't know. I think this deck sucks, if I'm being honest with you. I think it sucks. I don't know how it wins. It plays a bunch of like little units that just die to every single removable possible, dies to Sharp Sight. I think you're supposed to be really bad into Ezreal Draven and TF Swain. I know that. And I'm assuming you're bad into like Avalanche decks. And you're supposed to be good into, according to statistics, you're good into literally everything else. Like every mid-range deck you're good into, outside of exactly like Shurima Demacia because they have challengers and Sharp Sight. But outside of exactly that one, you're favored into like literally all of the mid-range decks. You're supposed to be favored into some of the aggro decks because they can't interact with you. So that's what stats say. I think the deck is just bad, but that's just me.
You said you picked the deck on a whim, but what did you actually learn from playing the deck in this seasonal? Do you have any take that maybe the viewers out there wanna know and maybe apply it when they are playing the deck?
Yeah, just draw top deck rally. Just whatever you have a board built, just top deck rally and win the game. That's what I learned. I learned that this deck sucks and you play a bunch of tiny units, but rally is a broken mechanic, so if you ever get to attack twice, you win the game.
It's interesting because Relentless Pursuit was fast to begin with and then they changed it to slow, but now if you are playing Senna in that deck and maybe you somehow get to level Senna, Relentless Pursuit at fast speed and one less cost.
Well, you don't even have to have leveled Sennas. It's just like level 1 Senna.
Yeah.
It makes all of it. Oh, I guess leveled Senna probably does the same thing. Yeah. So it's crazy. Yeah, Fast Speed Pursuit is nuts. I think they need to get Fast Speed Pursuit back so we can have it. I am a big advocate for Fast Speed Pursuit because I play it.
Makes total sense. But from this Nuts Aggro number 1 to the next deck, which, yeah, you guessed it, it's this Nuts Aggro number 2. So, and this one, it is Pirate Aggro. Same question,
Yeah.
why did we bring Pirate Aggro to the tournament, despite Swim telling us it's good?
Yeah, so I actually asked for Pirate Aggro specifically because I just think it's like the second best aggro deck behind Discard Aggro. I think it's just not that great of a deck, but I think it's the second best aggro deck, so I kind of picked it. It's better than Spiders, and then it's better than every other like tier 3 and tier 4 aggro deck because it's a like solid tier 2 aggro deck, so that's why I wanted it.
Alright, I do see here Double Up, and I was personally a fan. Like, when this card appeared, I immediately played 2 copies of them. I net decked someone that was playing it on EU and Rising Tide, and the card was amazing. How do you feel about the card now in the current meta? Because it also got a buff, it's not 6 mana anymore, it's 5.
I think Double Up sucks.
Are you going to do me dirty like this?
Look, man, I was thinking, like I feel kind of bad, but Double Up sucks right now because every deck has protection for their units. So you have to hope that they're like, it doesn't hit the cards you want it to. Like, it doesn't kill Eye of the Dragon unless it's already damaged. And then even if it is damaged, you have to do it when they have 0 mana because they play Twin Disciplines, they play Guiding Touch, they play Pale Cascade, they play like all of these cards that just save it. Same with Shurima, like Shurima Demacia, they play Shapestone, they play Sharp Sight into all of the like any Ionia deck, like Elusives, they play Twin Disciplines also. So it's like card is even against other aggro decks, they just play Noxian Fervor. So it's just like this card is so bad. And you just need a card that fits the deck. You just need like one more Decimate, and this card is like a bad Decimate. So that's why it's in the deck, because you really want 4 Decimates.
Did you get to actually set up a successful double up throughout the tournament?
I think like 1. I recall doing 1 double up, and it was because my opponent tapped out for an auction on turn 3. and that was it. That's the only time I got to double up. And I literally chose to double up instead of Misfortune because I knew that if I didn't double up right then, I would literally never get to double up for the rest of the turn. So I had to waste my turn 3 on this stupid spell instead of developing a Misfortune, which made me really sad. But at least I got 4 damage into the face.
Yeah, makes sense. On the 5 mana slot, but not really, we have a unit this time. We have Jack the Winner. What's the utility of Jack the Winner in this deck, and why do we have a 1-off in it?
Yeah, so I like Jack because all of my aggro decks, I want to be able to have this explosive opener. I think this deck plays like 14, or it plays like 12 1-drops or something like that. 11 or 12 1-drops. So I want the really explosive triple 1-drop opener into some crazy turn 3s. But I also want to be able to have some resilience to where if I don't kill my opponent on turn 5, how do I win? And all of my decks do that, right? So Discard Aggro says if I don't kill my opponent by turn 5, I have things like Jinx and Experimenter and like a large crowd favorite possibly to win. Against with Elusive, if I don't kill my opponent by turn 5, I have rallies to win. And with this deck, it's if I don't kill my opponent by turn 5, how do I win? And it's because you have so much burn. That's typically how you do it. And then Jack the Winner just gives you more burn that you don't have to wait to turn 8 to play. Because originally this was going to be one Farron. But Farron is just too slow in this meta. Like, turn 8 basically doesn't exist right now. So being able to have Jack and even just getting the 2 damage off could be lethal. Like, in my finals game, I drew a Jack the Winner, and I was able to use the spell, and I actually ended up having, like, exact lethal, because I drew the Jack the Winner spell and got to play it.
So the list was originally play Captain Farron, or is it just a meta call, and the list was originally running Jack the Winner?
The list was originally running Jack the Winner, and then I wanted to change it to crowd favorite, I wanted to change it to Captain Farron, and then after trying it, I realized that it's just better as Jack, so it went back to being Jack the Winner.
Alright, one other interesting tech is one of Arachnoid Sentry. Can you elaborate a little bit on this?
Yeah, I love this card. I play Arachnoid Sentry in all of my Noxus aggro decks except for a discard. Like I play a one of in spiders, which I guess it can make a little bit more sense there because it's a spider. But yeah, I played one here. I played one in basically any type of Noxus aggro deck that isn't discard because it's such a huge tempo swing, especially if your opponent ever has a lifesteal unit, which those aren't necessarily as prevalent right now. And the meta, as much as it is, just being able to stop a blocker is nuts because you essentially get a huge tempo swing of you're playing a 3-power unit, which is really good, and then you're also denying your opponent from blocking. Sometimes it can force your opponent to block poorly. Like if they only have 2 champions, let's say they have 2 units in play. They have a ballistic bot and then they have a 1/1. You can stun the 1/1 and force your opponent to say, okay, you're either taking all of this damage or you have to sacrifice your ballistic bot, which is really, really good for me. And let's pretend, ballistic bot's a Draven. Then it's like, if they have just Ballistic Bot and Draven in play, you can say, okay, well, I'm going to stun the Ballistic Bot. So now if you ever want to block this turn, you have to block with Draven. And now that's really good for me because I'm trading my just 3/2 vanilla unit for your champion that has quick attack. So it's really good. And it just opens up a lot of turns to get some disgusting amounts of damage through. On top of, if they ever do have a lifesteal unit, you can stop them from either, you can stop them most of the time from blocking with it.
The most common lifesteal generation is, you mentioned before, I have the dragon, so did you get some cheesy lethal or maybe some cheesy piece of damage because you got to stun some of the dragonlings?
I don't think I ever got to stun a dragonling with it, but I did get a crazy lethal with I tried to fervor, I think it was a Sivir, and they saved it with, and this was a turn I was attacking. So I went to go Fervor a Sivir, and they Spirits Refuge the Sivir, and that was the last of their mana. And I was able to stun the Sivir, so it stopped them from having like this 5-power lifelink Sivir, or Lifesteal Sivir to block with. So that was pretty big. And I won the game on that turn.
That sounds nice. You call this deck the second best aggro deck after Discard Aggro, so what is making this deck so good? What are the good matchups? What are the bad matchups for Pirate Aggro?
Yeah, the good matchups for Pirates. So Pirates is one of those decks that can just randomly win the game because you open with like 4 or 5 like 1-drops, and you're just like, okay, well, here's my triple 1-drop opener, and then I have 2-drop 1-drop, and I win the game because no deck can really keep up with that. And then on top of that, this deck also only needs to hit you like twice, and then it just goes Decimate, Decimate, Decimate Fervor, or Decimate, Decimate Fervor with a Gangplank Keg or something. Like you play so much burn that it's really good if you have an explosive early game and you hit them twice and you have a burn hand. But then it's also good if you have a heavy unit-based hand and you just like outswarm them and make your opponent not be able to keep up in board presence.
Right. This deck, as you said, runs both units and burn. So could you explain to the people how to actually mulligan and how to actually play? Because you see people that maybe are at the beginning of the game, maybe they want to keep the burn because they do not see it anymore. Maybe they do want to go for their value cards, maybe like a Jack the Winner because they might not see it anymore. So could you explain to the people how the hell do you play Pirate Aggro?
Yeah, so I always just look for a triple one drop opener because it's the most explosive opener you can have. So that just means I look for 3 1 drops to be able to play a 1 drop on turn 1 and then 2 1 drops on turn 2. So that way I open with 3 units. Most of the time they're all doing 3 damage. Some of them only deal 2, but that's really good. I never keep burn spells in my hand. The only exception is against Draven Ezreal. I'll keep Decimate because it's guaranteed 4 damage, and units usually don't do much against Draven Ezreal. And then against other aggro decks, I'll keep Make It Rain. So aggro decks, you want Make It Rain. Control decks, you want to Decimate. Other than that, I've always just looked for 3 1 drops.
I've heard people that advocate for not playing Make It Rain into Pirate Aggro. What's your take on it?
Yeah, and I think those people probably just shouldn't be playing Pirates. That makes a lot of sense to me, yeah. I mean, Make It Rain's kind of just a broken card. I don't know. 2 mana, be able to kill an Eye of the Dragon. It's pretty good. Or not Eye of the Dragon, to be able to kill the Dragonling. Like, it kills a Dragonling, and the mirror matches, it kills, like, or not the Pirate mirror match, but in a lot of aggro mirror matches, it kills a lot of units. Like, if someone tries to attack you with Nightfall, something like that, they play a bunch of 4-1 fearsomes and 2-1s, and you just Make It Rain and kill all of them. That's nice. You can set up a really bunch of cool stuff with Misfortune. I did against 4LW when he was playing against me. In the Swiss rounds, he had Lee Sin. He had a 2-2, the 2-2 Celestial Dog, and then he had the 3-2 off of Concussive Palm. I full swung with the Misfortune trigger. He was going to get really good trades on his end, is what it looked like. Like he had a 3-2 killing my Misfortune and a 2-2 killing my 3-2. And what happened is I stacked Make It Rain with the Misfortune trigger, and then now I'm dealing 2 damage to all of his blockers, so his units kind of just died for free. I got to keep all of my units and then just swing really big for the next turn. So I essentially spent 2 mana to kill off everything and save 2 of my units, which was really, really big.
That sounds like a pretty nice play, but what are the matchups that you do not feel comfortable going into with Pirate Aggro?
I mean, probably the standard anti-aggro decks like Draven Ezreal, TF Swain, Anivia. Draven Ezreal is not too bad because they don't have any healing. If you do get a really nice opener where you get 6 or 8 damage in, if you can get 8 damage of unit damage in on the first couple turns, then it's actually super winnable. You just go like decimate, fervor type curve, and you feel really, really good. If you mostly just don't want to play against like other unit-based decks that can be aggro. So, for instance, like the Demacia Shurima deck feels a little bit bad because they can go, okay, 1-drop, match your 1-drop. And then if you, as the Pirate player, don't open with 3 units by turn 2, that you just go like, play unit on 1, play unit on 2. Well, they also just go play unit on 1, play unit on 2. And what happens is they end up just matching your playstyle, except for the difference being they have really, really big units on their top end and you don't. So they're going to match you and block all your damage early. And then they're going to come away with the game because they have really big Sivers and really big Ruin Runners towards the end of it.
Alright, thank you for the info. And now from the second aggro deck to the last aggro deck, and yes, you guessed this, it's named This Nuts Aggro number 3, and it is Draven Jinx, it's discard aggro. I think this is kind of your baby, right? You love playing discard aggro.
Yeah, it's my favorite. It's definitely my favorite deck. It's the deck I have the most games on. It's the deck I'm probably the best at out of all the decks I've played. So, yeah, I love discard aggro. So I'm glad when my opponents don't ban it because it essentially means I get a free win most of the time in my matches. So that always makes me happy. So it's really nice. I just like the ability to be able to swarm. The thing with discard aggro is people say, "Oh, discard aggro is just a high roll deck." They're like, if you don't high roll discard aggro, the deck sucks. The thing is, that's true. Like that's 100% true. However, you have like 4 different high rolls. So saying like you need to high roll to win is a true statement, but also you have to take into account you have a bunch of high rolls. You have like Zonite Urchin discard 1-drop and then rummage away another Jury Rig into Vision on turn 2, and now you're swinging for like 6 damage on turn 2, right? That's one. Like, if I had to sit here and name out every single combo and every single high roll with discard aggro, this interview would take an extra like 30 minutes to an hour. There's so many different curves with discard aggro and so many different like nut draws with things like Poro Cannon being able to discard things at 0 mana, and you have, House Spider sometimes, you have Arena Battlecaster sometimes, you have Rummage discarding 2 cards at burst speed. It's just like, it gets so complicated and so nuts that, yes, discard aggro is considered a high roll deck, and you do need to high roll with it, but because you have so many different high rolls, then it's just nuts.
Alright. How did you get to actually fall in love with discard aggro and make it your favorite deck? What does it have so special?
Well, first of all, I like Draven. I think Draven's like the perfect champion. So there's that. On top of it, I love aggro. I mean, I just like aggro in general, and I think discard aggro is actually the most skill-intensive aggro deck. It allows you to improv on the spot. It feels like playing Joker in Smash, where you have your bread and butter combo. So you have like your curves that you go, okay, 1-drop, 2-drop, Draven, Vision, right? That's like the most common, most basic curve you can do with Draven Jinx with discard aggro. But then on top of that, you have all of these little mix-up you can do in between with like, you open with triple 1-drop in this deck also. And it's not very common, but you can, where you go Rear Guard on 1, Zonite, discard Jury Rig, Zonite, discard Vision. Boom. That's like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then another 4. So that's 12 damage on turn 2. That that's so crazy to be able to see that. It's just being able to sit there and look at your hand and just formulate like, how do I get the craziest opener with the most damage possible here? And I've straight up dealt 20 damage to people on turn 3 with some of these just super nut curves before. And it's really cool to see all the different curves. And even today, I'm like learning some more curves where I'm like, oh, I've never done this curve. After 2,000 plus games with this deck, I have never done this like 20 damage on turn 3 before until today. And it just feels really, really cool.
And for people that are not playing discard aggro, or maybe they are not experts there, they haven't played 2000 games, but still want to bring it. Is it a good call in this meta, or they should refrain from playing it?
Yeah, I mean, I think discard's an amazing call in this meta right now. It beats all of the anti-control decks, which is good. So it just loses to what is your like Draven Ezreals and your Draven Ezreals, TF Swains, and Nivea decks. Outside of that, it actually doesn't lose to anything else. It beats all of your aggro decks because you get to play Jinx, you get to go House Spiders, which is an amazing anti-aggro tool. You get to beat all of the Demacia and Shurima mid-range decks. So even with the Shurima Demacia like Silver Auction deck that's supposed to be good into aggro, the only aggro deck it's not good into is Draven Ezreal. At worst, it's a 50-50 for discard aggro. Or sorry, I meant Draven Jinx. So at worst, it's 50-50 for Draven Jinx. So even there, that being one of the most popular decks on ladder that people think is the best deck in the game right now, being able to at worst be 50-50 into it is really, really good if you're good into everything else on ladder.
Nice. And we talked about people maybe picking up this deck. Maybe they're going to pick it up after the patch drops and we get new cards. Do you have some elementary tips for people trying to learn this deck, or is there anything to learn about this card aggro? You said you are learning things every single day.
Yeah, so I have a couple of deck guides over on my channel about discard aggro because it's always updating and stuff like that. But a very, very common curve is just Zonite Urchin discard Jury Rig on 1, House Spider on 2, Draven discard Vision on 3. That's like your most common, most standard curve that pushes out an insane amount of damage while at the same time it's not too uncommon because you're just going play a 1-drop, play a 2-drop, play a 3-drop. And the most like crazy thing about all of that is you have a vision at the end of the day. Even if you don't have a vision, that's still an insane curve because then that opens up the door for like a crowd favorite, right? If you don't have vision, then you can just swing with just Draven because he's a 3-mana 3/3 quick attack that is not going to be blocked on turn 3. And then now you play crowd favorite with the full board and you have a 4-mana 7/6 overwhelm. And so it's just like, I don't know how like many decks can't deal with that on turn 4 that early very well, or they have to spend all of their resources dealing with that card, in which case you now have your entire rest of your board to just kind of take over the game.
I love to call this the Fiora effect, where people tunnel vision so hard on a card that can potentially lose the game that they do not see the bigger picture and that the whole board is still there and they're going to manage dealing damage.
Yeah, it's like they spend their entire turn casting a Vengeance on the crowd favorite or something like that, or thermo beaming the crowd favorite, that they forget that I still have a full board full of units that have vision on them and buffed and stuff like that. It's really funny.
Before we actually move to other questions, you are running double survival skills. What's the meta call at the end of the day that you're playing this on?
Yeah, so the meta is that it's a bunch of mid-range right now, And the biggest thing is there's a bunch of vulnerable and quick attack. So basically, I don't want to just slam my Draven down and then have it get eaten by. I don't want it to just be another Gift for Renekton on turn 3 because of like Merciless Hunter. So it's really nice to go, okay, Draven on 3 or 4, swing, and then they go, give it vulnerable, pull it in with Sivir. If your opponent pulls Draven in with Sivir and you ever have survival skills, the game is just done. You just win the game. You just killed their champion for free. On top of you leveled your Draven more than likely. So now your Draven has overwhelm. You came out so positive in that trade that your opponent should probably just concede. Anytime your opponent has to bank or spend a bunch of mana killing your crowd favorite, like with a Thermogen, and you have survival skills, the game is over. Anytime they have to like get excited Mystic Shot your Jinx and you have survival skills, the game is over. Survival skills is just an insane way to keep all of your really important units alive, because this thing is only ever going to hit either Draven or Jinx or crowd favorite, and all three of those are extremely important. But the biggest reason to play right now is because of all of the vulnerable plus quick attack in the meta.
Alright, so we have seen your decks, we have seen Triple Aggro. What is actually the call for this lineup in the top 32?
I mean, it was the lineup I was most comfortable with. I still think it was a great call for the meta. I mean, it turned out it was. There was only 2 lineups in the entire top 32 I was unfavored into. So, yeah, I mean, it was basically just came down to if my opponent brings triple anti-aggro, congrats on them. They're going to lose in round 2. They kind of just, like, screwed us both over, but I can't do anything about it. So I'm just going to bring aggro, give myself the best chance at top 4ing if my opponent doesn't bring triple anti-aggro.
And did you have any change of heart at any point, or to be fair, because you played in a few seasonals, in any seasonal to jump off the triple aggro train or from the aggro train and bring something else?
I mean, I've definitely considered it and thought about it, but every time I thought about it, I was like, man, I'm not extremely comfortable with this. And then also, this is all just me mind gaming myself anyways, because it's just a bunch of like, anytime I bring aggro if I think it's like actually a good meta call. So to switch off something that you think is good is kind of weird. The only reason you would do it is because you're playing mind games with your opponent because of the horrible way that top 32 is formatted in seasonal formats. So it's just, I just brought it because I still thought it. I thought it was good in Swiss. I think it's good in top 32. And if my opponent wants to play shitty mind games, they can play shitty mind games.
Completely understand, but you played throughout the tournament, you came on top of it, you won it all, and now if you had to reflect over the general tournament experience, what would you change to the tournament? What would you change to the format to make it, let's say, more competitive friendly, more entertaining for people to play?
Yeah, I mean, I think the entire format is fine outside of exactly how top 32 works. The only problem I have with seasonals is round 1 of top 32, how it's seeded. So for those of you that don't know, top 32 is like publicly seeded, and you're allowed to change the decks that you brought in Swiss. So you can play one lineup in Swiss and then be able to change that to play a different lineup in top 32. And I think that's fine. And then they have it so the way it's seeded is you know exactly who you're playing against round 1 of the top 32. And I think that's fine. What I don't think is fine is when both are happening at the same time, when you both know exactly who you're going to play against, and then you're also allowed to change your lineup. Because what that does is that introduces an entire like new element to the game that has absolutely nothing to do with playing card games, has absolutely nothing to do with Legends of Runeterra. And it's only just these stupid, like, it's essentially advanced rock, paper, scissors of how are you going to next level your opponent, and, oh, my opponent brought triple aggro in the Swiss, and he's known as a really good aggro player, so I'm going to bring anti-aggro, right? And then your opponent goes, well, he knows I play aggro, so I expect him to play anti-aggro, so I'm going to beat the anti-aggro decks with this. And then the opponent goes back and goes, oh, well, what if he expects me to bring anti-aggro, so then I counter his anti-aggro lineup with this? And you can literally do that infinite times until you eventually, it just goes into who out-levels the next person without reverting all the way back to, like, what we call a one-head lineup. It's just extremely stupid. I think you can either let people have, like, switch your lineup, but then make seeding random so you don't know who you're playing against, so you don't have to worry about all of this stupid mind game stuff. Or you can have seeding and show you who you're playing against round 1, but don't let you switch lineups. And this is what people like. I know there are a couple of Europeans that love how the system is set up because they like, oh, well, being able to strategize and set up plans for top 32 and spend this time to like mentally prepare and try and out strategize your opponent, stuff like that is just as important as playing the actual card game. I don't really agree with that, but if that is your take, then that's fine. Just don't let you change lineups, because if you show me what I'm playing against, I have an entire week now to prepare. And I'm like, okay, I'm playing against exactly this lineup and exactly this player. I can study their play style even. I can study their decks. I can do all of this mental preparation and then be completely ready for this round one. The problem is you can't do that if you don't know what they're playing. You can just have to sit there, and at the end of the day, you're just playing rock, paper, scissors and hoping that, like, if my opponent would have brought some triple Shadow Isle, Draven Ezreal type lineup round one, I wouldn't be here. I would have lost. Like, and there's nothing I could have done about that, right? So at the end of the day, it's just rock, paper, scissors, and it's awful. And I hope they change it. I hope they make it one or the other.
Which one would you prefer to see being replaced, and which one would you love to still see play?
I don't actually care. Like, I honestly don't care. I think both are perfectly fine. I think not being able to change your deck, but knowing who you're playing against is perfectly fine. That's what they do in other tournaments like Magic the Gathering. But I also think, like, saying you can switch your deck, but random or seeding is random, I think is perfectly fine, because that allows you to explore new options. Because maybe, playing in a 1,000 person Swiss tournament is going to be a completely different meta than playing in a very isolated top 32 meta with really good players, right? Because in a 1,000 person tournament, from all, like, literally all ranks, you're going to have all types of decks and metas, and you're just going to want to bring what is the most consistent and most likely to win you 8 rounds, and that's all you need to do. In a top 32, you're playing in a very stacked, like, small tournament with really good players, and the meta is going to be almost completely different. Like, for instance, we saw in every region but North America, the winners were like Tahm Kench, Soraka, Azir, Aurelia, and then something else. Like, you cannot bring Tahm Kench, Soraka, and Azir, Aurelia in the Swiss rounds, because you're going to play some degenerate, like, in top 32, there were, I think, like, three degenerates that brought aggro. In 1,000 players Swiss round, around 9 rounds, you're for sure going to hit somebody playing aggro, or playing something that's just completely random and then beats all of your decks because you didn't prepare for random decks.
Alright, now tournament is done. And what are you going to actually do to the money? This is the burning question.
I'm gonna get level 30 items in Pokemon Unite. That's a start. I'll spend most of that money on getting Pokemon Unite items. After I get level 30 items, I'll probably have about 200 left over, and I'll just go get some ice cream.
Love the answer.
I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna do with the money. Who knows? I'll probably just save it, wait to move, something like that. Who knows?
Nice, but this is kind of the dream come true for you, because you've been trying so hard in all the seasonals to get to that top 4, to get to that seasonal placement, and now you finally did it. Who helped you prepare for this tournament? What did you do to prepare for this tournament?
I really didn't. I was just not interested in LOR ladder the week before seasonal, so I didn't practice really at all. I was like, I'm just gonna bring 3 aggro decks. I think they're fine right now, and I did really well in Swiss. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I just played a bunch of Pokemon Unite, whatever. And then I saw my bracket for top 32. And originally, the person I was playing round 1 was on triple Shadow Isles, anti-aggro, like 9 Withering Whales, 9 Vile Feast, stuff like that. And I didn't try again because I was like, well, there's no reason in trying. My opponent's just going to bring triple anti-aggro, and I'm probably going to lose round 1, so who cares? I'm not going to, try too hard. I'm just going to play Unite and have fun. The day before the seasonal, I get an announcement saying the bracket changed, and the person I'm playing round 1 isn't on triple anti-aggro. And I was like, fuck. Like, I actually have a chance at winning now. It's like, I actually have a chance at winning my round 1. I should probably, like, care and probably try. So I spent about an hour practicing with Cephalopod and Grandpa Roji. And we practiced the Uxian, Sivir, Demacia matchups exclusively. And then about 45 minutes into it, Cephalopod said, why are we practicing? You should ban this deck anyways. And I said, okay. So I just banned the deck that we practiced against. So that was the only practice I had.
Practicing so against that ban anyways.
Yeah, I practiced for 1 hour and then ended up banning the deck that I practiced with, or practiced for.
Yeah, so sounds, as I said, the story sounds crazier and crazier every time you say something about how it unfolded. But now we are near at the end of the interview, and before I let you off the hook, I have a few more questions. First and foremost, you are the example of if you want it, you can get it. So what advice would you give to people that are actually going to try to qualify through the seasons, that are going to aim for that world spot? What would you tell them?
Yeah, just first off, play whatever you're comfortable with, man. Like, don't let people's meta tier list and bullshit skew you into playing exactly these 3 decks, especially if you're not comfortable with it or they're not fun for you. Who cares? Just play whatever decks are fun for you. Of course, it's better if you enjoy the decks and they're good in tier 1, but like, you don't look at last seasonal. Duckling won with some janky ass tier 2 and tier 3 decks, right? One seasonal. I won this seasonal with Triple Aggro, where everyone said Triple Aggro was horrible, and I'm playing tier 2 decks. So it's like, you don't need to play the best deck in the game and play these broken decks to win. Just play what you're comfortable with, play what you know how to play, and just enjoy it. Like, just try to have fun.
Awesome. And we're at the end of the interview, and this is the last question that I do address to people, and that is, if you had to say only one thing to the persons now watching you, which one would that be?
If I had to say what? Like, one thing to who?
One thing.
To who?
To the viewers.
Oh. Follow me on twitch.tv/emotional, twitter.com/MreMOEtional, and youtube.com/MreMOEtional.
Love it. Thank you, Mo. It was a pleasure to have you around. And guys, this is just the first interview. There's going to be more to come, and more crazy, more out of this world players like Mo are going to be here. Thank you for tuning in for this one. Stay tuned for more in the next one.